Now, this one that we see right here that I believe should have been a flagrant foul was not called that. So there have been cheap shots, there have been hard fouls, there have been other plays that haven't even been called.
In the WNBA, some things don't seem fair, especially for Caitlin Clark. One example is a foul that should have been called, but wasn't. This wasn't consistent with how things were called all season. Clark has dealt with missed calls, cheap shots, and rough fouls. At times, it feels like the referees are targeting her.
Harrington poked Caitlin Clark in the eye. Caitlin fell to the ground. She was holding her face. The refs did not call a foul. They didn't call a foul.
Once, Clark received a technical foul just for hitting the basket support in frustration. The penalties she faces often seem strange, as if the refs are watching her more closely than other players. For example, during one game, Harrington poked Clark in the eye, causing her to fall to the ground holding her face, but the refs didn't call a foul or even give a warning. Another time, Clark barely touched an opponent's face and still got penalized.
The use of these WNBA referees pretty much altering games, changing the outcome of games, and something has to be done in regards to that matter. The WNBA referees has definitely been playing a major role in who's winning games and who's.
It even happened after Clark simply shouted in excitement, and she was given a technical foul. But where were the refs when Clark was really hit, like when Carrington smacked her in the eye? The refs didn't do anything. It's almost like they weren't paying attention or just ignored it. Some fans joke that maybe the refs were distracted or didn't see it. Clark has finally spoken out about these issues, calling them out publicly, and it's getting people talking. There's a growing feeling that WNBA referees aren't fair, and sometimes it feels like they're influencing the outcome of games. CLI4. This has become a major issue, not just for Clark, but for the integrity of the league. Clark's achievements this season are incredible, and she's breaking records. She's now the all-time leading scorer in college basketball with nearly 4,000 points, surpassing legendary players. Every game, she makes history. But despite all her success, Clark isn't getting the respect or fair treatment she deserves from the refs. It almost feels like the refs have a different set of rules just for her.
Points gets tripped up. So the Fever really stretched out this one in the second half as we look at Diamond DeShields and Caitlin Clark.
Fouls on other players are often obvious and called quickly, but when it comes to Clark, the refs sometimes don't even acknowledge them. There's a saying in sports, play fair, but in Clark's case, fairness seems one-sided. Many WNBA fans and experts see what's happening and are questioning the fairness of the game. Women who are older are noticing it too.
Working inside the reverse. Owen took a big hit there on.
Some people believe the refs are ignoring fouls against Clark on purpose because she's so good and so young. Older or more experienced players might feel threatened by her success. Unfortunately, this attitude isn't just coming from her competitors, but also from those who should be enforcing the rules. The unfair treatment Clark is getting doesn't just affect her, it impacts her entire team.
Women who are older than you, better than you on your team, but if they see that you are a young star and you're doing really well, they will do whatever they can do to sabotage your.
Her teammates depend on her skills to lead, create plays and score. When the refs don't protect her, it forces her team to work harder. They play with more stress, not knowing if the refs will call fouls fairly. One of the worst parts is the technical fouls. Clark has picked up 6 technical fouls this season, and she didn't deserve most of them.
Aces, she also picked up her 6th technical foul in the second quarter of last night's game after slapping the side of the basket, the padding on the basket down there in front.
She wasn't fighting or swearing, she was just frustrated. 6 technical fouls for simply showing emotion is a serious issue because if she picks up one more, she could face suspension. Imagine that, Clark could be suspended just for being passionate. Many people feel these technical fouls are unfair. It seems the WNBA punishes Clark more harshly for showing emotion, something natural and part of being competitive.
Major because it's her 6th one. If she gets one more, she is.
It's almost like the refs have a radar that activates whenever Clark expresses frustration. Other players show emotions all the time, but they don't seem to get penalized nearly as much as she does.
Throws and then, got frustrated with the officiating at times, but that's where we've got to be better and we've got to, handle those things. It's not going to be perfect. Those guys aren't going to be perfect.
Even LeBron James commented on the situation, saying he agrees with those who think Clark is being treated unfairly. He mentioned it seems like some players are jealous and want to bring her down. Clark has exposed some real issues with the referees. According to her, one of the refs gave her a technical foul just for showing emotion after a questionable call. This situation is frustrating for Clark and her fans. Everyone can see what's happening, even the referees.
You're 100% right on these girls hating on Caitlin Clark. Y'all petty.
The problem is that the refs don't seem willing to fix it. Fans are disappointed because this unfair treatment affects the games, the players' reputations, and the league's image. As Clark continues to compete, it feels like she's fighting against both the refs and her opponents. It's not fair that she's penalized for things other players are allowed to do. The WNBA should be focusing on building a fan base and attracting new viewers, but the way they're treating Clark could hurt the league's image. Fans want to see the best players on the court, competing fairly. They want the referees to be consistent with their calls, but the current system has too many issues, and people are noticing.
I think she got fouled and missed those 2 free throws, and then got frustrated with the officiating at times. But that's where we.
If these issues aren't fixed, it could drive fans away, hurting the league's growth. Fans might stop watching if they feel the games aren't fair, or if they think their favorite players are being treated poorly. In recent years, the WNBA has gained more popularity and respect, but these referee issues are holding it back. The NBA, for example, has made many improvements to its officiating system over the years and has learned to protect its star players. The WNBA can learn a lot from the NBA. In the NBA, referees are held accountable for making fair calls, and they review games to see if they made any mistakes.
Weeks ago that said Caitlin Clark received 17% of the WNBA's flagrant fouls this season, and 80% of those flagrant fouls were committed by the Chicago.
In the WNBA, it feels like referees aren't as strict with themselves, and this is damaging the game's fairness and reputation. Caitlin Clark's situation is a clear example of how much this issue impacts players and fans. Fans are calling for change. They want the WNBA to address these referee problems and ensure that all players, especially stars like Clark, are treated fairly. They're asking the league to protect players from unfair calls and biased treatment. Referees need to focus on making the game safe and enjoyable for everyone, including protecting players from fouls that could cause injuries. If the WNBA doesn't step up, there's a risk that players like Clark might lose faith in the league. Why play in a system that doesn't have your back? For fans, it's disheartening to watch games where it seems like the refs have their own rules. Fans watch to support their favorite players, and when they see unfair calls, it makes them question the fairness of the entire league. Clark's resilience and performance, despite this unfair treatment, are remarkable. It shows her commitment to the game and her determination to succeed no matter what obstacles she faces. She's already an inspiration to young athletes around the world, showing them how to handle adversity with strength and grace. But even the strongest players need support and protection, especially from the officials who are supposed to enforce the rules. Moving forward, the WNBA has an opportunity to show its commitment to its players by making necessary changes, implementing stricter oversight for referees, reviewing questionable calls, and ensuring that players like Clark are treated fairly would be a good start. The league's fans and players deserve a fair and competitive environment, and Caitlin Clark's story is a reminder of how important that is. The WNBA can make this right. They have the chance to show that they value fairness, integrity, and the well-being of their players. Clark deserves to play in a league where her skills are respected and where she's judged by the same standards as everyone else. Fans are hopeful that the WNBA will listen, make changes, and allow Clark and other players to focus on what matters most, playing the game they love.